Deep in the heart of the whispering woods, where sunlight danced between the leaves and the wind hummed lullabies, lived a curious little fox named Solis. Solis was no ordinary fox. He loved to sleep. But more than the act of sleeping itself, Solis was fascinated by the dreams he had. Every time Solis drifted into slumber, he would wake up with tales of extraordinary adventures, swimming with glowing jellyfish in oceans of starlight, flying alongside golden eagles through sapphire skies, or wandering through cities made of sugar where the rain tasted like honey. The animals of the woods eagerly gathered to hear his dreams, marveling at the vividness of his imagination. One day, a squirrel named Pip asked Solis, "Why do your dreams sound so real? It's almost as if you've been to these places." The fox tilted his head, his amber eyes sparkling. "I don't know, Pip, but I do know this: when I dream, it feels like I'm truly living in those worlds, like it is not a dream." Eager to learn more, the animals decided to keep watch over Solis as he slept that night. Beneath the sprawling branches of the ancient elm, Solis curled up, his tail snugly wrapped around him. His breathing slowed, and soon his body shimmered faintly, as if catching moonlight. Suddenly, a soft glow surrounded him, and Solis began to fade, his form becoming translucent. The animals gasped but stayed quiet, watching in awe. On the other side, Solis opened his eyes to a realm unlike any he had seen before. Floating islands drifted in the sky, connected by rainbows, and rivers flowed upwards into cascading waterfalls. A towering lion with wings of fire greeted him. "Welcome, Solis," the lion rumbled. "You are the dream walker, destined to explore the dreams of all living beings. Through your journeys, you bring back stories that unite and inspire." Solis was humbled but delighted. "Can I share this place with my friends?" "Not directly," said the lion, "but through your tales, they will feel as though they have been here themselves." "That is your gift." When Solis woke up, he was surrounded by his friends, all of whom stared at him with wide eyes. "You disappeared," Pip exclaimed, "and you glowed like the moon." Solis grinned, his tail wagging. "Wait until you hear this dream." And so he began to share his adventures, painting the magical realm with his words. From then on, Solis wasn't just the fox who loved to sleep. He became the storyteller of the whispering woods, a dream walker who united the animals with tales that reminded them of the endless possibilities in their own dreams. In a small, quaint village nestled between rolling hills, there lived a young aspiring chef named Mira. Myra's dream was to open her own restaurant, one that could bring joy to every heart and warmth to every soul. But there was one thing she needed: the perfect signature dish. She had tried everything: savory stews, decadent pastries, and intricate desserts, but none felt truly hers. One evening, while rummaging through the attic of her grandmother's old cottage, Mira discovered a weathered cookbook. Its cover was cracked, and the pages were yellowed with age. As she flipped through it, she found a peculiar recipe called the Golden Feast. There were no details, just the name and an intriguing note: "To taste the magic, add a piece of yourself." Myra's curiosity was piqued. She was determined to recreate this dish. The next morning, she ventured into the village marketplace, collecting the finest ingredients: vibrant saffron, fragrant herbs, and golden honey. The villagers, curious about her project, eagerly shared tips and gifted her their own treasured spices. Back in her tiny kitchen, Mira began. She sautéed, simmered, and baked, but something always felt off. Each attempt was delicious, but lacked that spark of magic. Frustrated, she sat by the window, staring at the stars. Then her grandmother's words echoed in her mind: "Cooking isn't just about following recipes, it's about putting your heart into it." Realizing what the cryptic note meant, Mira decided to personalize the recipe. She thought about her fondest memories: the late-night tea sessions with her grandmother, the wild berries she'd pick as a child, and the smell of warm bread on cold mornings. Incorporating these elements, she added a handful of freshly picked berries, a pinch of tea leaves, and a touch of nostalgia with a sprinkle of cinnamon, her grandmother's favorite spice. When the dish was finally done, the aroma was unlike anything she'd ever smelled. She plated the meal and took a bite. It was perfect, a symphony of flavors that felt comforting and extraordinary at once. The next day, Mira shared her creation with the villagers. They were enchanted. Each bite seemed to evoke a cherished memory or a long-forgotten joy. Word spread, and soon Myra's tiny kitchen turned into a bustling restaurant, known far and wide as the home of the Golden Feast. Mira learned that cooking wasn't just about ingredients or techniques. It was about love, memories, and the courage to pour a piece of yourself into every dish. Once upon a time, on a scorching summer day, a thirsty crow flew across the land in search of water. The heat was unbearable, and the crow was tired and very thirsty. Despite searching far and wide, he couldn't find any water. Finally, he spotted a pot near a house. Hopeful, the crow flew down and peered inside. He was relieved to see some water at the bottom of the pot. However, the pot was deep, and the water level was too low for him to reach with his beak. Determined, the crow decided to try different ways to get the water. First, the crow pushed and nudged the pot with all his might, hoping to tip it over. But the pot was too heavy for him to move. Next, he tried to break the pot with his beak. Desperate to reach the water, the crow pecked at the pot, hoping he could break a small hole to make the water spill out. But the pot was too tough, and soon the crow's beak started to ache. Exhausted and feeling defeated, the crow almost gave up. But then, as he rested, he noticed small pebbles lying around. A clever idea struck him. He picked up one pebble with his beak and dropped it into the pot. Then another and another. To his delight, with each pebble he dropped, the water level rose little by little. The crow tirelessly continued, dropping pebble after pebble into the pot. Finally, the water reached the top, and the crow could drink it easily. Satisfied and refreshed, the crow flew away, proud of his persistence and cleverness. Moral of the story: when faced with challenges, don't give up. Keep trying different solutions and think creatively. Eventually, you'll find success. In a quiet coastal village, Lila was known for her paintings of sunsets. Her work seemed to capture more than colors. It held a kind of magic, as though the sky itself lent its light to her art. One evening, while walking along the shore, Lila was approached by a mysterious old woman in a cloak. She held an ancient, worn brush, its bristles thick with colors long faded. The woman handed the brush to Lila and told her, "This is a sky painter's brush. With it, you can paint sunsets that the world will never forget. But be warned, this gift comes with a price. To paint the heavens, you must take from the earth." Eager to try the brush, Lila returned to her studio. That night, she painted a sunset directly onto the sky, sweeping hues of rose, amber, and violet across the horizon. The village marveled, and for days, people spoke of her stunning sunset as if it were a blessing from heaven. But soon, Lila noticed something strange. The colors of her brushstrokes lingered in the sky long after dusk had fallen. Each evening, her sunset would remain, sometimes until dawn, and even when she didn't paint, vibrant streaks of color filled the sky. She was horrified. Determined to fix things, she painted again, willing the color back into the ocean. But the brush, now warm and pulsing with an unsettling energy, painted only more sunsets, each more dazzling than the last. She could not control it, and each attempt seemed to pull more color from the world around her. The lush forests turned dull, and the flowers around the village lost their brightness. The villagers, once in awe, now began to worry. "Lila," they whispered, "your sunsets are beautiful, but our world grows paler by the day." Desperate, Lila returned to the shore, hoping to find the woman who'd given her the brush. She waited until dusk, her eyes scanning the horizon, but the woman did not appear. Instead, she remembers, to paint the heavens, you must take from the earth. In that moment, the sky shimmered, and she heard the faint, familiar voice of the old woman again. To paint the earth, one must give back to the earth. Lila understood what she had to do. She returned to the village and carefully placed the brush into the ground near the shore, covering it with soil. The very next day, a single flower bloomed where she'd buried it, a radiant blossom with petals of rose, amber, and violet, mirroring the hues of her final sunset. And the colors returned to the sea, the forests, and the fields, vibrant as before. And each evening, the villagers gathered to watch her final sunset, a beautiful, everlasting flower. Though Lila continued to paint, she knew she'd never use magic again. The world itself was magic enough. From that day forward, her sunsets remained in her art, a celebration of the beauty around her and a reminder of the gift she'd been given and the wisdom she'd found in choosing when to let it go. Once upon a time, a poor but honest woodcutter was working by the river, chopping down trees to earn a living. Suddenly, his axe slipped from his hands and fell into the deep water. Heartbroken, the woodcutter sat by the river and began to weep, for he had no money to buy a new axe, and without it, he couldn't support his family. Hearing his cries, a river spirit appeared and asked, "Why are you crying, woodcutter?" The woodcutter explained his plight, and the spirit took pity on him. Diving into the river, the spirit soon returned with a gleaming golden axe and asked, "Is this your axe?" The woodcutter, honest as he was, shook his head and replied, "No, that's not mine." The spirit went back underwater and reappeared with a silver axe. "Is this your axe?" the spirit asked again. Once more, the woodcutter said, "No, that's not mine either." Finally, the spirit fetched the woodcutter's simple iron axe. The woodcutter's face lit up with relief, and he happily said, "Yes, that's my axe." Impressed by his honesty, the spirit rewarded the woodcutter by giving him all three axes: the golden, the silver, and his own iron one. Overjoyed, the woodcutter thanked the spirit and went home with a heart full of gratitude. News of the honest woodcutter's fortune spread through the village and soon reached the ears of a greedy, dishonest man. Envious of the reward, he decided to try his luck by pretending to lose his axe in the river. The dishonest man went to the same spot by the river and purposely dropped his axe into the water. Then, he began to cry loudly, hoping the spirit would appear. Sure enough, the river spirit emerged and asked him why he was upset. The dishonest man lied, saying that he had accidentally lost his axe in the river. The spirit, willing to help, dove in and returned with a golden axe, asking, "Is this your axe?" Without hesitation, the dishonest man claimed, "Yes, that's mine." But the spirit saw through the man's lie. Disappointed by his deceit, the spirit kept the golden axe and did not return the man's own axe either. The dishonest man was left empty-handed, having lost everything through his greed. The moral of the story is that honesty is always rewarded, while dishonesty leads to loss. By being true to oneself and others, we invite goodness into our lives, whereas deceit and greed only bring misfortune. In a quiet forest glen, there was a young bear named Benny. Benny was not like the other bears who loved wrestling, climbing trees, and catching fish. Benny had a special dream. He wanted to dance. Every day, Benny watched the forest animals, especially the graceful deer and playful rabbits, move through the woods. He loved the way they pranced and leaped. He wanted to move like that, to twirl and jump and sway to the rustling sounds of the forest. But Benny had a problem. Every time he tried to dance, his big bear paws would trip over themselves, and he'd end up tumbling over with a big thud. The other animals would laugh a little, saying, "Bears aren't meant to dance, Benny. You should be wrestling or climbing trees instead." Benny tried those things too, but his heart just wasn't in it. One day, as he practiced alone by the river, an old, wise owl named Olive noticed him. "Why the long face, young bear?" Olive asked, landing softly on and near him. Benny sighed. "I want to dance, but I'm just too clumsy." Maybe bears really aren't meant to dance. Olive hooted thoughtfully. Benny, do you know what makes a true dancer? Benny shook his head. It's not about being perfect, Olive explained. It's about listening to the rhythm around you and moving however feels right in your heart. Dancing is for everyone, no matter how big or small. Encouraged by Olive's words, Benny closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He listened closely to the sounds of the forest, the gentle breeze in the trees, the trickling of the river, and the rustling of leaves under his paws. Slowly, he started to sway, moving his paws to the rhythm of the forest. He stretched his arms and took small, careful steps, finding his own style, a lumbering, gentle dance that felt just right for him. It wasn't like the deer or the rabbits, but it was all his own. As he moved, other animals began to gather, curious about what Benny was doing. They watched as he twirled in his big bear way, and soon, a few of them joined in. The squirrels leapt from branch to branch, the rabbits hopped along, and even the foxes pranced in a circle around him. At the end of his dance, everyone clapped their paws and cheered. "That was amazing, Benny," said the deer. "You showed us a whole new kind of dance." Benny grinned from ear to ear. He realized that it didn't matter that he didn't dance like everyone else. He danced like himself, and that was what made it special. From then on, Benny danced every day, happy and free, and the other animals loved joining him in his big, joyful bear dances. And so, Benny learned that dancing comes in all shapes and styles, and that when you dance from the heart, it's always beautiful, no matter who you are. Ethan was a simple cobbler in a small, quiet village. He earned just enough to survive and was known for his humble nature. One rainy afternoon, as he closed his tiny shop, he spotted an elderly man struggling to walk through the muddy streets. His shoes were worn out, his clothes soaked. Without a second thought, Ethan called out to him, "Sir, come in. Let me fix your shoes." The old man hesitated, but eventually stepped into the shop. Ethan worked diligently, repairing the shoes with his finest materials, even though he knew he wouldn't be paid. When the shoes were ready, the man slipped them on, relief spreading across his face. "You're a kind soul," the man said, placing a single golden coin on Ethan's counter. "This is all I have to give. Keep it." Ethan protested, but the man insisted and disappeared into the rain. Curious about the coin, Ethan showed it to a traveling merchant the next day. The merchant's eyes widened. "This is no ordinary coin. It's an ancient artifact worth a fortune." With the money from selling the coin, Ethan expanded his cobbler shop, hired workers, and began offering free shoes to those in need. The kind deed he once did for an old stranger had not only helped someone in trouble, but also changed his life in unimaginable ways. Moral: acts of kindness never go unrewarded. Sometimes, the goodness we give to the world comes back to us in ways we could never foresee. At the wet of a quiet village stood a warmed-over tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted like an old, wise face. The villagers tapped at the wishing tree, for it was said that anyone who tied a ribbon to its branches under the light of the full moon would have one wish granted. But the wishes came with a rule: you could not ask for anything selfish. Ivy, a kind-hearted young woman, had heard the tales her whole life but had never visited the tree herself. She didn't believe in magic, or so she told herself. But one dank storing evening, as the moon rose full and golden, she found herself walking the forest path toward the tree. In her hand, she clutched a simple red ribbon. When she reached the wishing tree, she was struck by its beauty. The branches glimmered with hundreds of ribbons of all colors, fluttering like butterflies in the breeze. Each ribbon represented a wish, a hope, a dream, a longing. As Ivy tied her ribbon to a low-hanging branch, she whispered her wish: "I wish my little brother could walk again." He had been injured in a wrecking a year ago, and she would give anything to see him run and laugh like he once did. Suddenly, the tree shuddered, and its branches creaked. A soft voice, warmed over and deep, filled the air. "Your wish is pure, child. But all gifts come with a price. Are you prepared? Ivy hesitated. What kind of price? The voice did not answer. Instead, a single leaf, golden and glowing, drifted lanugo from the tree. Ivy unprotected it in her hands, feeling its warmth. Take this to the one you love, the voice said. But remember, not all miracles are as they seem. The next morning, Ivy gave the leaf to her brother. As he held it, a golden light enveloped him. Slowly, miraculously, he stood up. Tears streamed down their faces as he took his first steps in over a year. But as the days passed, Ivy began to notice changes. Her brother's laughter, once warm and carefree, became distant. His steps grew quicker, but his vision held a strange, otherworldly gleam. One night, he whispered, "The tree, it's calling me." Terrified, Ivy returned to the wishing tree under the flipside full moon. "What's happening to him?" she cried. The tree's voice replied, "Life is a balance, child. What was taken must be returned. To save him, you must offer something in exchange." Without hesitation, Ivy said, "Take my legs. Let me siphon his burden." The tree was silent for a long moment, surpassing responding. "Your selflessness is rare. For this, I will requite you both a gift." The tree shimmered, and Ivy felt a warmth spread through her body. When she returned home, she found her brother laughing as he once had, his vision well-spoken and full of life. But Ivy's legs remained strong, and she could still walk. The tree had granted her wish without taking anything away. From that day on, Ivy became a legend in the village, a reminder of the power of selfless love and the mysterious generosity of the wishing tree. In the small town of Evercrest, the old clock tower stood at the center of everything. Its chimes marked the rhythm of the town, morning, noon, and night. But what made the clock tower truly special was its weathered copper bird perched at the very top, wings spread as if ready to take flight. The townsfolk called it the Bird of Evercrest, but to Margot, it was simply the bird. Every day after school, she would sit at her home, sketching its shape in her notebook and wondering if it had ever truly flown. It used to, her grandfather claimed one evening as they watched the clock tower from their porch. Margot tilted her head. "How can a statue fly?" Her grandfather chuckled. "It's no ordinary bird. Long ago, it was alive. It helped guide travelers through storms and brought messages to lost souls. But one day, it landed on the clock tower to rest and fell asleep. The longer it stayed, the more it became part of the tower. Some say it's waiting for someone brave enough to wake it." "Waiting for what?" Margot asked. "A reason to fly again." That night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Margot decided she would wake the bird. She grabbed her sketchbook, a flashlight, and her courage and snuck out of the house. The climb to the top of the clock tower was harder than she expected. The winding staircase seemed endless, and the gears of the clock ticked loudly in the silence. Finally, she reached the narrow ledge where the copper bird perched. Up close, it looked even more lifelike. Its feathers were etched with incredible detail, and its eyes, though made of metal, seemed to glint with a quiet awareness. "Hello," Margot whispered, feeling a little silly. "I know you've been up here a long time, but if you're waiting for a reason to fly, maybe I can help." She opened her sketchbook and began to draw, carefully tracing every detail of the bird and the view from the clock tower. As she worked, she spoke softly, telling the bird about the town below, the people who passed the tower every day, and how she had always dreamed of flying. Hours passed, and just as she finished her drawing, the first rays of dawn touched the bird's copper wings. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the air, and Margot felt a warm breeze stir her hair. She gasped as the bird's eyes began to glow, and its body shimmered with light. With a powerful stretch of its wings, it shook off centuries of stillness and rose into the air. "Thank you," a voice whispered, though Margot wasn't sure if it came from the bird or her own heart. The copper bird circled the clock tower once before soaring high above the town, its glowing form fading into the morning sky. When the townsfolk woke that day, they found the clock tower bird was gone. Some were puzzled, others sad, but Margot just smiled. She kept her sketch of the bird, a reminder that even the quietest dreams can take flight when given a little hope.
In a quiet forest, there once lived a hare and a tortoise. The hare was famous for his incredible speed. He loved to show off, challenging anyone he met to a race just to prove how fast he was. The tortoise, on the other hand, was known for his slow, steady movements and calm demeanor. He preferred to take his time, carefully considering every step he took. One sunny morning, the hare was boasting to the other animals about his unmatched speed. "I'm the fastest creature in the forest. No one can even dream of beating me in a race," he bragged, hopping circles around them. Most of the animals rolled their eyes, used to his arrogance, but the tortoise decided he had heard enough. "Speed isn't everything," the tortoise said in his measured voice. "I may be slow, but I think I could beat you in a race." The hare burst into laughter. "You beat me? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard," he said, wiping tears from his eyes. "All right, Slowpoke, I accept your challenge. Let's race tomorrow at sunrise." Word of the race spread quickly, and by the next morning, animals from all over the forest had gathered to watch. The squirrel was chosen to be the referee and waved a bright green leaf as the starting flag. "On your marks, get set, go," she squeaked. The hare shot off like a bolt of lightning, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. The tortoise, true to his nature, started slowly, taking steady steps along the path. The other animals cheered and clapped, but many whispered to each other, doubting the tortoise could even finish the race. Before long, the hare was so far ahead that he couldn't even see the tortoise anymore. Confident in his inevitable victory, he slowed down to admire the view. "What a beautiful day," he thought. "I'm so far ahead, there's no harm in taking a little break." Spotting a shady tree, he stretched out and decided to nap for a while. Meanwhile, the tortoise trudged along, step by step. He didn't worry about the distance between him and the hare or the whispers of the crowd. Instead, he focused on the path ahead, repeating to himself, "One step at a time will get me to the finish." As the hours passed, the animals started to murmur. "Where's the hare? Shouldn't he have finished by now?" they wondered. Slowly but surely, the tortoise moved closer to the finish line. Suddenly, the hare woke up, startled by the fading sunlight. "How long was I asleep?" he muttered, rubbing his eyes. He looked down the path and froze. The tortoise was just a few feet from the finish line. Panic set in, and the hare leaped up, sprinting as fast as he could. The crowd gasped as they saw him streaking down the path, but it was too late. Just as the hare was about to catch up, the tortoise took his final step over the finish line. The forest erupted into cheers as the tortoise was declared the winner. The hare slumped to the ground, defeated and embarrassed. "How could I lose?" he muttered. "I'm the fastest animal here." The tortoise turned to him and said, "You relied on your speed, but I relied on determination and persistence. Speed is useless if you don't stay focused." The hare nodded, humbled by the experience. From that day forward, he became more respectful and thoughtful, never underestimating others or overestimating himself again. And so, the story of the hare and the tortoise became a favorite in the forest, teaching everyone that patience, perseverance, and humility are often more important than raw talent or speed.
Once upon a time, there was an old man who had 3 sons. The sons were always fighting and arguing, which made their father very sad. One day, the old man had an idea to teach them a lesson. He called his sons and showed them a bundle of sticks tied together with a rope. He said, "Can you break this bundle of sticks?" The eldest son tried first. He used all his strength but couldn't break the bundle. Then, the second son tried, and he couldn't break it either. The youngest son gave it a go, but he also failed. The father smiled and untied the bundle. He handed each son one stick and said, "Now, try to break these sticks." The sons broke the sticks easily, one by one. Then the father said, "Do you see? When the sticks were tied together, they were strong and no one could break them. But alone, they were weak and easy to snap. If you stay united and help each other, you will be strong." But if you fight and stay apart, you will be weak. The sons understood their father's words. From that day on, they worked together and stopped fighting. Moral of the story: unity is strength. When we stand together and support each other, we become stronger and can overcome challenges. However, if we are divided, we become weak and vulnerable. Mia had always loved the library. It was her haven, rows of books whispering stories and secrets, the smell of paper and ink lingering in the air, and the quiet hum of people lost in their worlds. Every Saturday, without fail, she'd claim her favorite spot, a cozy corner with a big armchair tucked by the window. It was here she devoured books, letting the sunlight warm her as she flipped through pages. One particular Saturday, as she reached for a novel on the top shelf, her fingers barely grazed the spine. Before she could step on her tiptoes again, a hand appeared and plucked the book down for her. "Here you go," said a soft, warm voice. Mia turned and found herself looking up at a tall man with kind brown eyes and a shy smile. He was wearing a sweater that looked as cozy as her favorite chair. "Thank you," she said, clutching the book to her chest. "No problem," he replied. Then, glancing at the cover, he added, "That's a good one. The ending will surprise you." Mia tilted her head. "You've read it?" "Twice," he admitted, his smile widening. They exchanged a few more words about books before he excused himself, heading toward the historical fiction section. Mia returned to her corner, but her thoughts kept drifting to the kind stranger. The next Saturday, as if by fate, he was there again. This time, he was seated a few tables away, engrossed in a thick hardcover. Mustering courage, Mia decided to break the silence. "Excuse me," she said, approaching him with a smile. "I finished the book. You were right, the ending was unexpected. Any other recommendations?" The man looked up, a bit startled, then grinned. "Plenty. Have a seat." And so, they talked about books, life, and everything in between. His name was Ethan, and he was a history teacher with a passion for writing. Over the weeks, their Saturday encounters became a ritual. They'd recommend books to each other, sometimes swapping novels like secret treasures. One afternoon, Ethan surprised Mia by leaving a book on her armchair before she arrived. Inside, tucked between the pages, was a note. "Mia, your laughter is my favorite chapter. Would you let me write more stories with you? Dinner next Saturday." Mia felt her heart leap as she looked across the library to find Ethan watching her nervously. She held up the note with a radiant smile and mouthed yes. From that day, their love story unfolded like a beautifully written novel, one filled with laughter, late-night conversations, and an ever-growing bookshelf of shared. In a popping town where everyone seemed in an unvarying rush, there was a peculiar shop tucked between towering buildings. Its sign read, "Elliot's Timeless Wonders." The shop was run by an elderly clockmaker named Elliot, who was as mysterious as the intricate clocks he crafted. Elliot's clocks weren't ordinary timepieces. Each was a masterpiece, ornate with godhead designs, golden gears, and tiny carvings of worlds subconscious within. What the townsfolk didn't know was that Elliot's clocks didn't just tell time, they stored it. One day, a young boy named Finn stumbled into the shop, curious and wide-eyed. Finn was unchangingly late. Late to school, late to chores, and late to meet his friends. "I wish I could tenancy time," he muttered, running his fingers with all the smooth surface of a grand clock shaped like a starburst. Elliot, hearing this, appeared from overdue a curtain, his squatter kind, but shrouded in mystery. "Time is a precious thread," he said. "Pull it too tight, and it snaps. Let it loose, and it unravels." Intrigued, Finn asked what that meant, and Elliot smiled. "How will I experiment? Take this clock." He handed Finn a small pocket watch with a shimmering, iridescent face. "But be careful, this isn't just any clock. It holds a fragment of your own time." Finn hesitated, but took the watch, eager to see its magic. That evening, he discovered that by turning the dial forward, He could skip moments he didn't want to face, and worrisome tests, a scolding from his parents, plain long chores. At first, it felt amazing. He breezed through his days, skipping everything that seemed tedious or uncomfortable. But soon, Finn noticed something strange. The skipped moments didn't just vanish, they became shadows, lingering at the edges of his memories. His friends seemed distant, recalling conversations he had skipped. His parents grew quieter, as if they were hurt by something he couldn't quite remember. The increasingly he skipped, the increasingly fragmented his world became. Desperate, Finn returned to Elliot, holding the watch with trembling hands. "I think I've made a mistake," he said. "I skipped so much that I don't recognize my own life anymore." Elliot nodded, his vision filled with understanding. Every moment, no matter how small or hard, is a stitch in the fabric of your story. Without them, the tapestry unravels. Elliot took the pocket watch and opened its back, revealing a swirling galaxy of Finn's missed moments. "Would you like to reuse them?" Finn nodded. Elliot turned the watch's hands backward, and suddenly Finn was reliving the skipped moments, not as burdens, but as pieces of himself. The laughter of friends during worrisome jokes, the warmth of his parents' voices plain when they scolded him, the quiet satisfaction of finishing a chore, all of it came rushing back. When the watch's magic was done, Finn felt whole again. He thanked Elliot and promised to treasure every moment, no matter how small. As Finn left the shop, he noticed the sign now read, "Time returned. Story restored." And though he would never quite understand the clockmaker's true power, he carried its lesson forever. Deep in the heart of the whispering woods, where sunlight danced between the leaves and the wind hummed lullabies, lived a curious little fox named Solis. Solis was no ordinary fox. He loved to sleep. But more than the act of sleeping itself, Solis was fascinated by the dreams he had. Every time Solis drifted into slumber, he would wake up with tales of extraordinary adventures, swimming with glowing jellyfish in oceans of starlight, flying alongside golden eagles through sapphire skies, or wandering through cities made of sugar where the rain tasted like honey. The animals of the woods eagerly gathered to hear his dreams, marveling at the vividness of his imagination. One day, a squirrel named Pip asked Solis, "Why do your dreams sound so real? It's almost as if you've been to these places." The fox tilted his head, his amber eyes sparkling. "I don't know, Pip. But I do know this, when I dream, it feels like I'm truly living in those worlds, like it is not a dream." Eager to learn more, the animals decided to keep watch over Solis as he slept that night. Beneath the sprawling branches of the ancient elm, Solis curled up, his tail snugly wrapped around him. His breathing slowed, and soon his body shimmered faintly, as if catching moonlight. Suddenly, a soft glow surrounded him, and Solis began to fade, his form becoming translucent. The animals gasped but stayed quiet, watching in awe. On the other side, Solis opened his eyes to a realm unlike any he had seen before. Floating islands drifted in the sky, connected by rainbows.